Ready? Good evening, everyone. Today is January 17th, 2023. It is 4:00 p.m. We are at the City Hall Council Chambers at 100 Polk Avenue in Cape Canaveral, Florida, for the City of Cape Canaveral Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA Board meeting. I call this meeting to order. Board Member Willis, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being here, staff and this board, for our CRA board meeting. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Davis. Board Member Kellum.
Here.
Chairperson Morrison.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Raymond.
Here.
Board Member Willis.
Here. Thank you. All are present. This time we're at the public participation portion of our meeting, and we are live streaming today. So if anyone is here or would like to speak, we ask that you please fill out a public comment card. Seeing none, no cards here, and looking in the audience, no show of hands needed. I have no one online at this time. I see that we will go ahead and close public participation and move on to the items for action portion of the meeting. Item number 1, approve minutes for the City of Cape Canaveral CRA Board meeting of October 18th, 2022.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Got a motion by Board Member Willis and a second by Board Member Davis to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Board Member Davis.
4.
Board Member Kellum.
4.
Chairperson Morrison.
4.
Vice Chairperson Raymond. Board Member Willis.
4.
Item number 1 passes 5-0. Item number 2 is provide direction to staff for the Community Redevelopment Agency programs for future activation. Mr. City Manager, or who you think is best? Dave, in this capacity?
I'll be glad to start it off, and Dave might add some color commentary as we go. Thank you, Mayor. We've included the first 6 pages of the incentive guide in the agenda packet. Basically what this is going back to October of last year, the CRA board met and said, hey, we like what we're doing with the sign grant program for the CRA. We've got $50,000 in this grant program. Could we haven't ever spent all of that with signs? Can't we do something more with this CRA money? Can we do more programs? The board and staff, we talked, and the direction was very clear. Let's all go back, read through the incentive guide, see if there's additional grant categories that we want to activate in the future. So staff met, Councilmember Kellum brought her ideas to us as well. Everybody had an opportunity, and what we've done here, and Dave did a really nice job of summarizing all of the programs that we're interested in. So on the first page, Daniel, if you can scroll, maybe that's Mia.
It's me.
Scroll. Yeah, so you see there's 6 bullet points under commercial. They include awnings, canopies, facades, walls and fencing, reconstruction of storefronts, exterior lighting, and landscaping and low impact development. Those are all the exterior ones. We also came up with an idea to include 3 residential categories. So there's exterior enhancements, including landscaping and lighting, paint voucher grant, and roof and soffit repairs. And it goes without saying there, this is all properties that would only be in the CRA. In other words, if properties are not in the CRA, they cannot qualify for this. Board Member Kellum brought us her ideas as well, and she hit on a lot of the same things that we did. She obviously kept signs in there because we didn't mean to exclude it, so thank you for keeping signs in there. So all these are the ideas, and when I spoke with Board Member Kellum, she said, well, I'll let her speak to that, but I believe you had some thoughts on the residential programs, Board Member Kellum?
Yes, I think that's really important to get off the ground too.
Okay, so there are the 9 categories. 6 of them are commercial, 3 of them are residential, that we think we can add to as grant programs, applications. So if the board agrees with these, maybe you want to add some and maybe you want to take some. But what we'll do is whatever you say activate, we'll create the applications for them, specific applications We'll follow the criteria that's in the draft incentives guide as far as the limits for each one. We'll make that available, and then we're going to advertise that in the community. We'll advertise through our social media, through our signage, various parts of the city, through our weekly update, basically get the word out and hopefully spend all of that $50,000 on these projects. And will be questions about the projects. We've talked before about how do you choose what gets it and what doesn't get it. And basically, if it's a qualified project, it's first come, first served until the money's gone. And if the money's gone, that's a good problem. It means we're being successful. And then we'll have an idea if we want to fund future budgets with more money on these programs. And that's it in a nutshell. Dave, did I miss anything important there?
We do have some basic eligibility requirements that we created as part of our commercial small business assistance, the sign assistance program. So there are some basic eligibility. That'll be something that we'll need to keep in mind as well as we start rolling this out into the residential arena, if that's what the board decides to do. But no, I have nothing else to add.
Dave, how quickly do you think we could get the applications prepared and an advertisement out if given direction from this board tonight?
I think that could happen very quickly. I mean, Dr. Frejo, when he prepared the incentive guide, there is a portion or an appendix, I don't recall, but there's a portion of the guide that he did prepare that includes the application. So I think we could just, based on that, we could use that as a jumping off point, and that could come together very quickly. So I could say within 30 days, I think we could have something ready to get out and start advertising.
So, Mr. Chair, it's really up to the board to decide. Do you want to do these programs? You want to add some? You want to take some? We're prepared to act on it, sir.
Thank you. Board, any questions for staff? Yes, Vice Chair Raymond.
Mr. Dickey, you spoke about eligibility, basic eligibility. Exactly what are you referring to?
Well, I can go through those very quickly. Currently, for the small business eligibility requirements, there's, I think, 4 of them. Actually, there's 6. Let me read those quickly. And that'll kind of give you a flavor of what we were thinking about for small business. And some of these may or may not be applicable to a residential program as well. So the first one, again, this is for our sign program. The applicant must be a for-profit, and we were targeting smaller business, so there has to be 25 or fewer. That may not be applicable to the residential side. Number 2, the applicant's business operation and proposed new signage must be located within the CRA district. That would be something we could come up with as far as the residential side. The applicant must be incorporated. I think that's truly a commercial consideration. Number 4, the applicant must be registered to do business in good standing. Again, a business consideration, must have a current BTR. Number 5, the subject property must be current on local ad valorem taxes and assessments. So basically, we're not wanting to spend CRA dollars on a delinquent piece of properties with respect to ad valorem. And number 6, and this is a commercial item, the applicant must not employ illegal workers. So, but again, it really depends on what the board wants to do. If you want to put income verification in there, if you want to be targeting a specific economic group within the CRA for these grants, that's something we can all look into. I will say this one thing, and I'm kind of speaking in a selfish manner here. The more requirements that we put on these grants, the more, I'll say, the more challenging it becomes to govern, especially when we get into the needs basis. That's a, I speaking for one staff person, I don't like being put in a position to determine needs-based eligibility. All that comes with income verification, and we start having to collect all of that and size of household information, and it can become a slippery slope there. So anyways,
The
my
application
comments.
either checks all the boxes or it doesn't check all the boxes.
Yeah,
Nothing else.
exactly. It takes all the subjectivity, if you will, out of it.
You were reading from something. Do we have a copy of that? If
No.
so, if you do read something that we have a copy of, could you just refer to the page, please?
Yeah, this is this is available. We have a unique page on the city website for
Okay.
our small business sign assistance program. And this is from that. So if you just do a simple Google search, Cape
Okay.
Canaveral Small Business CRA Assistance Program, you'll go right to that page. And there's a link on that front page for this. This is the actual application. It includes all the particulars on what an applicant.
Dave,
needs
is
to
that
be.
the same as page 6 of the incentive guide?
I don't know. Where are you seeing that reference,
It's
Todd?
in the packet, the agenda packet.
No, these are a little different.
Yeah, that's where I originally thought he was reading from. Well, so if, Vice Chair Raymond, did he answer your question there?
Yeah.
Get everything you need?
I just wanted
Yes. Board?
to. So as far as the, what's difficult is to determine who really is eligible. And I think it is difficult because you do get down to basic income, and if we're talking about elderly, social security payments, pension payments, and then you get into that, who really needs it? And it's difficult because you do have to choose. I mean, if we have multiple applicants. So I'm thinking about it.
I'm talking about the things you'd have to go through in a residential program as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's difficult, but on the other hand, it may be necessary, especially if we're talking about condominiums. We talked a little bit. If we're talking about residential property, it could be a condominium that might apply if they are in the CRA area, and they might need it,
I will
and they
also,
might not.
Mr. Chairman, I will also say that we've had the sign program, let's just say approximately 2 years,
Mhm.
and we've only had 3 people that have actually been funded through it. So I think the response has been a little less than I was hoping for. So there hasn't been a huge run on it. Now, if we were to open it up for residential, that may change it. But I just mentioned that just to give the board a sense of there doesn't seem to be a huge run on it from the commercial side.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a very narrow focused program. It was for one type of structure, a sign. And I liked it because we were coming off some hurricanes that really caused some blight in the community, and a lot of inbound citizen complaints came in about them. So I think that that definitely had something to do with it as well. But now that we're expanding the scope of different types of uses, and if we did also add in expanded the types of properties, that certainly, I think the $50,000 would go very fast. I mean, just the numbers, the pool that we would access, open up. And yeah, I think the other one, and the way we've traditionally spent the majority of the funds have been on public properties, and that's, less risky, not as debatable. It's obviously using the community's resources to do something good for the community. So it aligns really nicely. And I do think Cape Canaveral's done a good job with that. The community center, I mean, just go down the list of all the enhancements that we've been able to do. So because everyone benefits from it, that's why I think, or at large, the majority benefit, I think that's why public projects are great. And then the next type, when we think about businesses compared to residential, is if you take a restaurant, for example, well, everyone in a similar way has the ability to access that restaurant. And I think the argument for when you go down to residential, well, you're improving a residential property. Yes, it's in a blighted area, but it's kind of hidden, tucked away. Doesn't really impact the community as much as a business. So I think the exposure to the taxpayers, to the CRA, to the citizens, if exposure is high, public properties are the highest in my opinion. So those are no brainers. Second in line would be commercial. And, you know, I think we all agree that residential blight needs to be improved. This may not be the time or the best way to go about it. Even just looping these in together, we might want to think about that one independently, or say, where are the public properties right around these residential areas? Or maybe we step foot on some shared private space that's kind of benefits a region of the community, of the city limits. Those are the types of things, but I do see the challenges of, you know, one small parcel gets paint on their new home compared to a business gets paint that everyone has a lot more access to. Does that make sense from the fairness of it? Because that's really what it comes down to. And I am concerned about the verification process that you brought up on what it's going to take to qualify someone who is in need.
Well, one way of looking at the residential aspect of it is that if you're encouraging them to invest, clean up, paint, it improves the value of the homes around it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't detract from those. But again, I can
Yeah.
see your point about not right now, but I do have a question about the commercial. Could any of these grants be used to satisfy a code enforcement issue?
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah, no, I think there's language in there that would prohibit that.
I think we
the
did make,
current-
however, I believe an exception with the sign program, that if you had a non-conforming sign and it was going to be subject to this, it had to become a conforming sign. Because there was that whole amortization provision in our code about signs too, Dave.
I'm sorry, what was that?
And there was a whole amortization portion of our sign code
Yes.
about non-compliant signs
Yes.
becoming compliant signs. I believe that was an eligibility category for signage.
That is correct.
But otherwise, I think you have to be code compliant in all respects.
Let me briefly look at these on page 6, what Todd mentioned earlier. I think it may be in there about.
So that's the last page. So when the agenda summary, it's, you turn through the plan, it's just before item number 3. It should be this right there. There you, right? Page 6. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't see it there. The building must be structurally sound. Applicants must be current on property taxes, both city and county. I don't see anything that discusses the ongoing code enforcement.
But to me, it seems that it would be advantageous to the city to have them at least take a matching fund, bring their property into compliance, and we're not having to continually send code enforcement out there and exacerbate the issue.
You know, to people with code enforcement violation to be able to help them and offer this to bring them into compliance. And, you know, it's a win-win for them and the city and, you know, the neighborhood or whatever that's blighted. So I think that not, you know, helping with the code enforcement issues is a good idea.
Well, it basically comes to the point where we're either putting our money in code enforcement, trying to make them bring it into compliance, or we're going to help you halfway if you're going to apply for it. Again, you have to apply for it.
Right.
Yes.
I have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that because it would be perceived as rewarding people who have done something wrong.
Mhm.
And they've done something wrong because if they own the property, part of any home ownership or ownership of property, commercial, whatever, is maintaining it. And that's my problem with this.
In my head, that one we want to be careful with. I definitely want to have a talk with Todd and our attorney, and because what Vice Chair brings up is where my head was going is I was going the opposite. I was thinking that in order to qualify for the grant, you shouldn't have a year. If you have a violation in the past 12 months, it's like a background check, on the things that, if the property title, or if there's any obviously liens or those things, that we just want to be careful with that one. But I think there's a way to do that, right? Because the criteria is where I think would have to get it right. It's that scenario that we all go, you know what? Yes, they're in code violation, but these things are the reason why we feel good about funding it. But if it's too vague, I think those habitual folks, that might create some community resentment, might be perceived as a kind of a bailout. I don't know. I want to think on that one. And I keep going back. We started phase one with public properties. Then we carefully got into the commercial sector and chose one niche. I think to jump all in all sectors with that amount of money is going to create a lot of administrative work. Instead, could we do phased? And it could be twice a year, every 6 months, or once a quarter. But for this day, phase two can be just expanding that commercial. And then maybe phase three is we come back and we see how that went. And then we layer in, maybe it is the commercial residential, the rentals, the condos, those types of entities. And then maybe phase four, we go full blown residential, kind of walk in. But I know, yes, Board Member Davis hasn't had a chance to speak. So,
I was gonna say, I understand what everybody's been saying, and I understand not rewarding people that are doing wrong or bad things or wrong things. But I sit there and I think about, depending what type of, I'm going back to the code, what type of code violation they have, the extreme that they have, because it could be something minor. And these are the people that we may need help because they're the one that don't have the money to come into compliance. It's not someone that adds a structure to their building and intentionally is violating. But we're looking, the purpose is to help these people that need it. So I think, again, we'd have to debate again, if it's a minor violation, it's something that they flat out would love to do, but they can't afford to do it. They want to paint their house, they've gotten comments or whatever. So I think there's a fine line to what we're looking at.
Mr. Mayor?
Individualized,
yeah, well,
an individualized case.
Which makes it difficult too.
That's because it could just be a door.
I think we could all come to a scenario that we agree on that exists in the city today. And maybe the staff's looking for direction. Maybe this is one of the things that we say is, can we define that residential code violated property that we want to help? Yes, Board Member Kellum.
Yes, I think that, I think if we use this as a tool to help people, like Board Member Davis was saying, I can think of a couple businesses off the top of my head that are, code enforcement had to go there and say, okay, you can't do this. But if they had this as a tool and said, here's the way the city can help you become into compliance, and not like after they've had this lien against their property or code violations for a long time, but as a tool to help them come into compliance before it turns into a code enforcement nightmare. As far as lighting and things like that. There's a business now that needs lighting out front that I can think of off the top of my head. Another business that could use awnings instead of umbrellas in front of their store. That was a code violation. But if we offered these things as a incentive, this is a code violation, but this is how we can help you. I think that would be.
I think we reached a point, obviously final comments, that maybe staff can kind of help. And I would like to hear a little bit from our city attorney if he has any thoughts on it. But yes, Board Member Davis.
Is there any other cities that you know of that are doing this and how they're doing this? Are they having certain requirements? Are they doing first come, first serve?
Well,
Yeah, first come,
yeah,
first
I mean,
served.
No,
I
but
have
what are the structure, how
yeah,
they do it?
perhaps Anthony can jump in on this as well. I mean, I think we need to be careful as far as, to answer your question, no. But my comment, if you're asking for that, is that I think we need to be careful about incentivizing people to go in and get out of code enforcement issues. I mean, and what I mean by that is that, we do run across people in our code enforcement process that, because of their needs, elderly folks, very low income folks, they can't put up a new fence if they're having issues with their fences, or they can't take care of the fascia or their soffit if it's falling down and become disrepair. They just don't. There's certain people we run across that just don't have the money to deal with that. So that there is a small group of people in the community that depend, based on their needs. I can see if something like this could work as far as helping the city stepping in and helping to pay for it. I would say the majority of the people that get to a point where we have to take them to the special magistrate are either repeat offenders who know better, and I'm not going to say manipulate the system, but they know what they can and can't do. So I think I agree with what the chairman is saying, is that I think if we were to define who would be eligible for these kind of programs, the city stepping in and helping out financially, I think that could be beneficial. There is a group out there that could use that assistance.
Yes. Board Member Raymond.
I think it's good for us to be proactive. And we see where signs are out, for example. And like after the hurricane, and to just go and talk to the manager about this. I have done it. And just to say, by the way, we have this program through our CRAs where you can apply for some help with this sign. Oh, well, they didn't know that. They might be new in town. I don't know. Do we give people a welcome packet when they are new to the city as far as commercial? If they come in, they're from an out-of-state group. So, all right. So I'll give you a real solid example. I did stop by. It's owned by an Alabama company. They bought the Beach Wave up in Cape Canaveral, and their sign blew out. Yes, their sign blew out during the hurricane. And so I did stop by to talk to the manager. But of course, they have their layers too, and had to go to the district manager. So I don't know if they've applied since I spoke to them, see? But I mean, I think that's what I mean about being proactive. Explain to people, and this is something we all can do when we see something.
I do like the idea that code enforcement can help them with a path that makes sense from our side, that it isn't one of those habitual offender types. And however we get to that. And then more of a funny note, I thought about a feather flag buyback program. That was just a joke, but it brings up
I want to know. What are you
$5
gonna do
a
with
feather flag, cash. But yeah, I think I don't want to let this little scenario of a code enforcement get in the way of something really big and beautiful here. As far as defining that residential or that scenario, is that something that we'd like to work on together, or is that something?
Well, you did ask to hear from the city attorney about that code enforcement angle.
If he has anything.
Anthony, you prepared to speak to that?
Code enforcement's not expressly mentioned in here, but the program does require properties to meet the minimum building, fire code, and other code requirements. So I'm not sure that would qualify. I mean, this program's not intended to be an aid program for general code enforcement violations. You could end up incentivizing people to put their properties out of compliance so they can get matching funds for whatever needs they have. But it's supposed to be, keep in mind that this is a restricted fund. I mean, these are CRA dollars. They have to be used for redevelopment purposes. So, keep that in mind. City of Cocoa has had a facade grant program forever. And they do check to make sure properties are in compliance. with the code, and they provide these types of funds for purposes of, beautifying and enhancing the property more than just the minimum baseline. So just keep that in mind as well. $50,000 is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things for this type of program. So you may want to just consider being really targeted with the use of these limited restricted funds.
Yeah, I think that's why when we go out to that residential, I mean, I think we should make a decision or consider it further if we choose on, we agree that they should be code compliant before they are qualified for funds. And then I think as we're moving forward, we think about ways that we can help those who are challenged in whatever way. There's government-backed micro loans. I think CRAs, I don't know if we want to get in the business of administering loans, but CRAs, I think, can issue a loan because sometimes it's that capital up front, their credit's bad. If they own their property and you can give them a $5,000 loan, they can pay that contractor, that house gets painted, that landscaping gets done, and the city would have to secure it however we think is best. But that would also allow to get them out of the immediate pain if that's all legal. But those are things that I think we might be able to move forward on later. But to expand it beyond signs, I think is the first step. Do we at least agree to the types in here of awnings, canopies, the list? I think if you add them up, it would be 10 would be the max. Right? I heard 9, but if you add Board Member Kellum's up, she has 7 because the signs, right? So it should have been, and then the 3. So if it is 10, are there any that we want to hold off on? Instead of saying no, it's just maybe not now. City Attorney brings up a great point on, we have $50,000. So if we had to say what's the top and kind of the bottom, what would provide the best benefit for redevelopment to the community? Where are you going to get the best return on your dollar?
Mayor?
Yes, please. And yeah, jump in whenever.
I just think that $50,000 is not a lot of money. And in the last how many years, Dave, we've had 3 signs that we've done. I think if we make all of these things available and kind of see where the feedback we get and how it's going to go, and add the residential, those few things, residential repairs, add that as well. And, it's next year we could add more and maybe just more focus on what we get feedback on for the following funding for the next year. But I think we need to open it up, get the advertising out there. $50,000 is not a lot of money. And just get it going. And then we know, like when the strategic planning comes up, we'll have a better feel on what's happening out there and what people are interested in.
I agree with Board.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm just going to think out loud here, listening to all this. So you really want to get your hands around, like, let's just say the code enforcement, whoever drove up and down A1A right now, and based on some type of criteria that's going to be set that Dave has in front of him or whatever, and you came back and Dave said, okay, code enforcement, give me a report on what you see when you drive up A1A on signs that are in compliance or something that's not in compliance, of painting the buildings or whatever. And you get an idea of what that is. And let's just say it's 15 properties, okay? Whether it be painting, signs or whatever, then whatever an estimate would be to get these people to, I don't know if you do, they pay half, we pay half, whatever, but to get an idea of how much money is actually, you would just spend on that based on some type of report that staff would give. I'm just kind of just brainstorming, because how do you really determine how much money you want to put in to this fund? But if code enforcement told Dave, we got 15 places, 5 that got to be painted, we need 10 signs, and they did an estimate on what this would cost, and they say, that's $125,000. Just saying, to give us some place to go, because I think this is very hard to put your finger on, right? Because we don't know, what the quantity is, and
Well, I,
But I don't think I 100% agree, but we're not trying to figure out how much it would cost to make A1A. That would be a fun exercise. I think we're agreeing that these types of investments made $50,000 worth will be better than what it is today. We're going to improve. But it's not, we don't know what percentage that's going to make up of it, but we know it'll grow.
In reality, the person has to make the application. The way that this, I think, should be done is you take each individualized case. Each case would be totally different. I don't think that we need to beat this to death. Let's see what we get when people apply. I mean, you can give them the ideas. Let's see. We've only had 3 applications for the signs. And we've told people about the sign grant. Let's see what we get. I think you take it as an individual case.
But does the city see it as a CRA initiative to give the city a facelift to some degree? So we're using our CRA dollars to where they could visually be perceived that, wow, this is what we did for the places on A1A or who got involved. And I'm just saying, does the city to some degree dictate that, as opposed to saying, here's the criteria, apply, and then if you fit the bill, first come, first serve. How much doesn't the city want to I hate to say dictate, but dictate what they perceive needs to be done to, or is it just whoever wants to get involved in the program, if the funds are available for you and you jump on it, then you can
That's
do
the
it.
nature of a grant incentive program. It's voluntary.
Yeah.
We take 99% of our CRA budget and we do funnel it where we do want it to go. This is a voluntary incentive program, but it has to be that way.
Yeah. Okay.
and like you were saying, a study by code enforcement on what needs to be done on A1A, I think is a great idea. And that would be something we could use at the strategic planning to see, where we are. But right now we have that $50,000, and I would like to see this get kicked off the ground and just see where we go. I mean, like $50,000 is not a lot of money. And when you look at the different amounts, $5,000 or $10,000, and I think if we involve the community and the residential on those few things right there, that we might have a huge turnout. Hopefully.
It could catch on. It could definitely catch on.
But we got to get started somewhere
Right.
and then go from there.
And it would be nice to spend the $50,000 before September 30th this year that we have
Yes.
for something that's worthwhile.
I agree we should open it up and get started, but I think by individualizing it and trying to see who beats who and who needs it more, I think that's going to open up a can of worms for the city and for the staff. So I think right now it's kind of a trial thing. So do the first come, first serve. That way the city is left out of picking, this person over this person, and then there's no issues. And then when the 50,000 is over, we see what we did, how we did it, what worked, what didn't work, and we plan for the next year.
Yep.
And we budget whatever money for the next year. So that would be my suggestion.
So what categories then are we interested in expanding to all 10 of them?
I am open to all 10.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I think that's great. Or we would, do a layered approach. Because let me just ask this. I'm first of all fine with 10, but if you had to pick one that you think would positively impact the community at most across the CRA area of Cape Canaveral? For me, I lean towards landscaping and low impact development because that's a stormwater component, and we are trying to become the leader in low impact development. And the more properties that implement it, that one has my interest, but all 10 are fine. The only other thought was if we took 1, 2, and said, we are prioritizing flooding, low impact development. So if you're a commercial property owner or you're a residential and you implement our low impact development measures, if we just focused on that, just say for the first 90 days and then opened it all up, we might find that 50,000 actually flowed in and that filled low impact development. And that one, for me, I'm one person would make me smile the most out of all of them if I saw it. And I think a lot of citizens in this council, we all,
Well, then,
all of them make me happy, but that one's
when you
just a
send out
different
the,
way of thinking about it.
I'm sorry, I mean, interrupt. When you send out the information, that we're doing this, then emphasize that to the commercial buildings or whatever, that you can improve, and let them know. And if they decide to do it, there may be some that don't care and won't ever do it. I mean, just inform them what they can do and how it could be helpful to them and to the city, and then just let them see.
The low impact development takes the burden off of our stormwater system. So I can argue that that one impacts the community at a greater because, not implementing low impact development means more pavement, less impervious surface, or more impervious surface, and it flows. And we have to build more and more wider pipes, bigger pumps, and all the engineering that goes into it, to where the rest of them kind of fall short. I did like the signs because after the hurricane, those were a safety issue, just like roofs. If you've got things in disrepair, it certainly benefits the community to not have that stuff flying around. So, does anyone want to remove one that's just a not or something we don't want to move forward with, or do we like them all?
Again, I stated I liked all of them.
If we like them all, do we want to do them, start them all right out of the gates from the beginning? Or do we want to pick a few or one and say, do these, and then you roll these out after? And that might take some strain off staff from having to meet criteria for all, I'm just thinking you got to deal with roofers, you got to deal with landscapers, you got to deal with lights, electricians, just a lot of different, seems more complex for staff as well.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
what if for the remainder of this fiscal year, we only did commercial? And we see how the participation in that goes. And then in the next year, if we have exhausted those funds, then obviously there's big participation. And then we extend it out to residential in the second year.
Yeah, this full program was written, we invested. So that's what I'm thinking, something, just narrowing the scope a little. Would that help the city staff on administering this if you just had a few to focus on?
Well, it's new to us. I have to say we have a highly capable staff. I think we could handle it either way. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, if that's what the board would like to do, certainly.
Because remember, there's only so many dollars.
Yeah.
Once that's done, it's done. But
And again, how many responses for the signs have we had? I don't think it's going to be a stampede of people. Hopefully, it will catch on. But I think just to get the advertisement out there, these are our programs. This is how the city can help you. Limited funding right now, but I think that, and we'll see where it goes, like I said. And then for the next fiscal year, we'll have a better feel on who's doing what or what the interest is. But, it's been since 2012 that we've been trying to get these incentive programs going. And I think it's time. I think the people would appreciate, the city's really looking after the residents and their property as well as the commercial.
It's really a grand experiment that we're undertaking right now.
Is anyone opposed to not starting now? I'm all for starting now. Okay, so everyone start now. Everyone's okay. There's no one that wants to remove any of them. I think the question is, do we want to focus on one? I just get some heartburn when this person's roof got repaired when everybody else bought their own roof. This person's landscaping got done. I'm going to come at myself in my argument, but everybody else paid for their own landscaping. However, I love the low impact development piece because that's a way that impacts the community more. And
Mayor,
I don't feel great about this. I agree that the 50,000 will go very fast, the wider the net we cast. So maybe more than one, but
Mr. Chair, one way to address that perhaps would be to just phase them in over time. Like we could say landscaping and low development is the only new category until April 1st. Beginning April 1st, we're going to add 4 more categories. And then on June 1st, we add 3 more categories or something like that. Just phase them in, give them all the first shot. It's just tracking application dates. If I think that would scratch the itch you're getting at.
Chair,
Yeah.
I think they're all important. And I think that I'm just thinking in terms of people and what people do. If people put a new roof or paint their house, they automatically then take a closer look at their property and say, oh, now I want landscaping. I don't think we should choose one over the other. I think that we just keep it, let the person who's applying decide what they need.
yeah, I just like improving the dirt opposed to the structure is a little safer for us.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I want to throw one thing out. Really, the board controls the money. And the way we're controlling the money in these different programs is we're either giving them a 100% grant or we're doing 50% grants, matched dollar for dollar. So if the board would like to emphasize a particular, like in this example, LID projects, city is going to pay 75% of that or 100% of that. Whereas something that's not as important, we're only going to pay 50%. So there's different ways to skin this cat as well. So, you know, that's I just wanted to just kind of keep that in mind too, is there's ways to control the access to the cash.
And also when it comes to the money part, like Board Member Kellum was bringing up about the strategic retreat, we could talk about it then. But council, we can see what's going on during the year all the way up till July or August. And if we could change the budget before it's passed in July or August, if you said, you know what, based on what we found out, it's August 15th, we could actually put $125,000 in here instead of 75,000 now. And then council could decide, or the board could decide what they want to adjust one way or the other. So the one thing is, as far as how much money you'll want for the following year, that'll be pretty easy to do. So it's not like you're, you know, when the strategic retreat comes up and you say, well, okay, council, or whatever, we decided on 75,000. So that's where we're at. No, you're going to have July, August to determine if you want to change that amount, just like we did with the millage and everything else. So don't worry about that in terms of trying to nail down an amount. You've got plenty of time for that.
Excellent, thank you. So a higher matching grant for those, I love the threshold concept. Say, hey, this is 100% up to this amount, but the remaining of them are 50%, right? And that clearly shows this is what the city values. The next step is to provide direction, right? Which means just opening this program up and taking the steps we discussed earlier. If we want to move forward with all of them, I'm ready to do that. One of the benefits of opening, or with all of them that we'll put on the benefit side, is that we'll learn which ones are the most popular. Okay, is that good? We ready to move forward? Anything you need from us before we move?
A motion would be appropriate.
Okay, let's do it. Looking for a motion?
I make a motion that we go ahead with the commercial improvement grants as well as the residential improvements as well.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a motion by Board Member Kellum and a second by Vice Chair Raymond to go forward with the programs, commercial and residential. Any more questions, Board? Clear,
Mhm.
City Clerk?
Yep.
All right, ready to go. Call the roll, please.
Board Member Davis,
4.
Board Member Kellum,
4.
Chairperson Morrison,
4.
Vice Chairperson Raymond,
4.
Board Member Willis.
4.
All right, awesome. Item number 2 passes 5-0. Now we move on to items for discussion, which is Commissioner Zonka's affordable housing letter submitted by Vice Chair Raymond. Vice Chair Raymond.
After reconsidering Commissioner's letter, I agree we should attempt to address this complex problem in our city as we see a definite increase in our homeless population due to higher rents. We could purchase property for accessible housing, but we would need to purchase property such as the old Union Hall to build new housing or renovate existing properties, such as Poinsettia Lodge. It's possible to offer incentives to qualified developers and/or pre-qualified low-income residents. Special funding is available for first-time home buyers and low-income seniors. What I'm thinking about, and I've sat on that Transportation and Intergovernmental Affairs, we're prime property because we have the transportation link here. We are seeing more and more homeless. Our St. Vincent de Paul Society is paying a lot of money toward rents and electric bills lately. I see more and more homeless people. I had 2 homeless people at our Savior's Church on Sunday. I'm going to try to help one woman get a permanent place to stay through Genesis House. They have a new program for the elderly. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I think that we can address this. We can use some of our money to help out. Why affordable housing or accessible housing for people here in Cape Canaveral? We need our residents. Right now, we're losing our residents. I've talked about this before. A lot of the apartments have been taken up by Airbnbs or whatever, rentals, whatever you want to call them, vacation rentals. And it's a problem because our residents are moving out. When our residents leave, we could lose our services, our churches, our schools, etc. It is a very, very big problem. We know it's a problem all over the United States. I know that Homeless Coalition has already taken the applications and given okay to 50% of the people who have applied for the new affordable housing unit that is over there on 524. So 50% will go for homeless. I think that's a great thing, but we need to do something because our service people want to stay living in Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach. They want to stay here, but it's getting more and more difficult for them to find an affordable place to stay. I gave the example over on Pierce Avenue. Very small units. They were $525 a month last year for rent, went up to $1,025, doubled. We have no rules in the state of Florida to limit landlords to raising the rents significantly, double in this one case. We have to do something to help the people here. And I'm not sure exactly how, but I know in other cities, they call it workforce housing. Now they're talking about accessible housing, workforce housing. And I think that we may include that in our CRA. I know in the bigger cities, they have workforce, what they call workforce housing, and they do help. Thank you.
Thank you. Board?
I just want to make a comment. You said something about 524 because I know I saw a little thing and I looked a little bit into it. City of Cocoa is putting housing at 524 in Cox And they're also putting it at the southwest corner of Michigan and University. So what I found out when we talk about rates and how much and what they're doing, they are basing it on the area median income for let me see, for the entire county, which is 77,900. So when you look at different things, they're looking for smaller units, 30% of their median income, which is 25,707. So they have guidelines is what I'm saying. I'm not going to go into it, but they all have guidelines of how much they should pay and everything. And this is countywide. So that would be something we could look into and follow. This is going through the city housing authority by a guy named Rob Cramp. But I don't know how we could do it here, but there is going to be guidelines as far as how much they can pay based on the median income.
Those COCO projects are either private investment or the
Yeah.
housing authority. So
Right.
the city of COCO is not the entity funding those particular projects. There are restrictions regarding the income eligibility that are of the future residents of those projects that are either secured by covenants with the state of Florida because tax increment financing or state tax credit financing was used for one particular project. The other one is a private covenant, a city of COCO covenant that's being placed on a private development project because of the city council's willingness to approve affordable housing on commercially designated property. And then the third project that you're referring to is actually Housing Authority Initiative. All again with funding sources where the city is not technically putting up funds
Right.
for that.
As I said, I don't know how we could
Yeah, so-
actually do it and, where the land, unless they got somebody private brought in and previous, current property and,
There
redid
was
them.
I guess the point at the end of the day that I'm trying to emphasize to you, since as you know, I'm the city attorney for COCO, is that there are private parties coming forward or third parties coming forward to actually build these particular projects within the COCO community. And then they have certain asks of the city that so far have not been financial asks, so to speak, although the city has contributed at times on affordable housing projects funding.
Were there criterias for them? Because I know they were doing, but they're doing like 30 projects or something in COCO or something.
There are a lot of
What were the
projects.
criteria? Like, do we have any of the criteria that COCO had that they would want to come in? No. We have nothing that would bring it in.
Like for example, if some developer is getting some tax credit funding, okay, from the state of Florida, those income requirements are mandated by the state, so they're already in place. There was another particular project where the private developers coming in to do an affordable project. The project is not currently zoned appropriately for residential, commercial zone. So they asked the city council pursuant to Florida statute that allows the council to waive their own zoning requirements in furtherance of affordable housing. And in that particular case, the city put a covenant on the land restricting income eligibility to certain standards that the city manager recommended. I'm not sure if they were the same as the tax credit funding project, but now the city, if this project goes forward, the city staff is going to have to be in a position of maintaining and managing whether or not the developer is complying with those covenants, because the city is going to be the enforcement authority with respect to that project. On the state project, the state actually monitors compliance with covenants for income eligibility. So the city doesn't have to step in and actually do that type of enforcement. That's how, at least in those particular cases, the city is trying to facilitate affordable housing or workforce housing within their community. Again, not so much a funding contribution, but as a facilitator from like a zoning and a land use permitting standpoint.
Yes.
Might be more than you want to know, but.
No, not really. I
Okay.
understand that through the Schimberg Foundation there at the University of Florida, that there's a list of 100 developers that work with the low income housing. And that's what a city needs to do, is to try to get some of these low income housing developers. At one time, I understood that we almost had something worked out for one of these developers to come in to Cape Canaveral. But I think that it would be an intelligent move for us to have something like this, to try to look into this, to see if we could get one of these developers interested in the city of Cape Canaveral as far as trying to build something for workforce housing.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to just mention a couple of things quickly. First is, cities typically generally have two different ways to facilitate, is the term Anthony used. It's either financial or regulatory. The few low-income developers I've spoken with over the last several years, there's been a regulatory hiccup in our code. So I think if we're going to get serious about this, we're going to have to look at what those hurdles are and addressing them from a regulatory standpoint. So that's job one. I used to work for one of these low-income housing developers that Anthony's referring to up in Chicago area, so I'm very familiar with the process and what they're looking for and how they work. And we spoke with one several years ago, Tim Wheat, out of South Florida. He works he's a VP for one of these tax credit developers, and they took a real hard look at a piece of property in this city. It's a very competitive process. You're being ranked against all the other proposals that year, and the state DEO reviews them. And it's basically there's a scoring system, and you get points for your project based on a number of criteria. And so there's ways that we, the city, could assist a developer in getting a better score than if we were not participating and not assisting in one of those projects. So I think there's in lieu of stroking a check for somebody, I think there's ways that we could assist, but it's not going to happen overnight. We'll have to really take a hard look at it.
Yes. Anything else?
Yes, I wanted to know, I thought we had discussed this when we were discussing the CRA plan and all that, and bringing the Economic Development Board on board to advise the CRA and the city. And I thought that the first thing we were talked about tasking them with was affordable housing or workforce housing. And I think, that would be their department to kind of advise us on what to do and how to get there. And then in Cocoa, Anthony, is it the CRA that is helping these incentives, or is it the city themselves?
No, it's actually the city, not the CRA.
Okay. And then my other question was, I know a while back there was a developer that had purchased land on West Central to put a assisted senior.
There's an assisted living facility on West Central that's
and
fallen apart.
whatever happened with that?
Yeah, the property owner got foreclosed on. He doesn't own the property anymore.
Oh, okay.
So that project is.
Well, I think that it's very important, and there's a lot of senior citizens, like you're saying, that are getting priced out of their homes. So it's something we
big
need
issue.
to deal with sooner than later. But I think the Economic Development Board coming on board will really help us with that.
The other idea that I have, and I don't know, this is an Anthony question. It would be nice, if maybe we could work with Cocoa Beach, for example, to have something that, you know, like a combined effort. And I don't know if that's even possible. Cocoa Beach and also like Avon by the Sea is county property. If 2 or 3 cities or groups could get together on a project like this, I mean, you know, I'm, you know, an idealist. I just think that it's something that's definitely needed, you know, along here. The reason why we have the transportation, there's a big link between accessible housing and transportation. And we are on a great transportation route. And, you know, that would definitely be a big plus, a big plus, because a lot of people don't have transportation. And even the bigger cities, when they look at this, it's the first thing they discuss, transportation, because people have to get a job and go to work. And that's why this is connected. Well, I do have to share with you that this is the #1 priority for Space Coast League of Cities this year, is definitely affordable housing. And I think that the legislature in the state definitely has to address this big time. Everyone's talking about it finally. So I'm really happy to have Zonka's letter and to see that our county is talking about it. We all need to talk about it. Thank you.
Board Member Willis, any comments? Okay, thank you. Yes, and you have affordable housing and then you just have homelessness. And I can say that on the cold nights, there's 3 places in the county, and my brother serves on the north one there to help folks who don't have housing. And so that's just volunteers and donations, and that just gets somebody who is in a very bad situation out of, we had some cold nights.
Yes.
And I certainly appreciated my bed this past week. And so through that process, there were some folks here in the city of Cape Canaveral that, as you were saying, that I spent the majority of my Saturday, and the biggest challenge was transportation. They had a job on the beach in Cocoa Beach. It was, they were in a place sleeping that they should not have been. It was very cold. They needed to get to the warm shelter. The community came together, the buses ran scat to Titusville. They did not want to go because he had to be at work the next morning. He says, you're going to pull me all the way to Titusville and I've got to be at work the next morning. And he didn't have transportation, him and his wife. And got online, the app, and now we have live tracking on the buses, but these folks don't have resources. And so some things to help in those more severe situations. Affordable housing is very big challenge, no doubt, but the saddest are those situations where there's no home and it's cold. And so Cape Canaveral, I think it's very difficult to get back to Cape Canaveral on certain days of the week. For example, this Monday was remembering Martin Luther King, and Space Coast Area Transit ran the weekend bus route, which is a Saturday bus route. So we were able to get them to Titusville. We were able to have a private party drive them back the next day. Then they did not want to go. We tried to get them to Cocoa, but they would not go to Cocoa the next night. The sharing center there, it's Life Point Ministries, the sharing center, and Melbourne. But those 3, we could not get him back to work in Titusville due to a public transportation scheduling issue. And so those are, the little things they made a decision to sleep in the cold that night because he did not want to miss work. And we finally pushed as hard as we could to encourage that. And I hope they made the right decision. But I just didn't, I'm very sensitive to this issue. And I think if we had to prioritize, we can coordinate with the county and work with those resources. And I'll talk with Todd about some of those ideas. It's just bus schedule, like you said, transportation, because it is, you have the cost of housing, cost of transportation, and you have the cost of living. And it's kind of cost of living is all of it together. If you can help with one of those costs, transportation, that's an easy way to allow people to get economically back on their feet. And maybe
we
the
do.
state can help more on these other ways, but that was my comments. It is important, and I do think we need to
Yep.
keep it in front of us.
We're spending about $800 every few weeks for the bus passes at St. Vincent de Paul. I also
whole
have to tell you, I
community, yeah.
just found out from a client last week when I was working on Wednesday, the Housing Authority has issued vouchers to people. It's a first come, first serve. They have to go over to Dixon to apply. And what they're doing with some of the homeless is they're putting them up in different hotels.
Mhm.
And I didn't know about this. It is through the Housing Authority. If you see or talk to homeless people, they have to say in the application that they were affected economically by COVID-19. But most of the people have had COVID, so they can say that. It is a possibility. But I just found out about the program. Again, communication isn't that great. And this is something that I've been working with the homeless people since 2011. So I should have had that information. And there's another new group called, I think it's called SDA Elderly. And what they're doing is they're housing people through Genesis House. Genesis House in the past just took women with small children or pregnant women. And they had individual, they didn't tell you where they would house the people. But for the elderly now, they have to be over 65, I believe. No, over 55. And what they have a program now, and they gave me the contact number, and it's through Genesis House, and they do have openings for people. But here it is. They have to go through an application and a background check, but it's $600 to $1,000 to rent a room. All utilities are paid for, and it is furnished. So, but it's an option. I mean, some of the people in Cape Canaveral are paying more than $200 or $300 a week to stay in a very small efficiency over like at Sandpiper and some of the other places around town. It's really a lot of money, or over $1,000 for an efficiency unit.
Mhm.
So I do think that
Skyrocketed.
I'm glad that we're discussing it anyway. I mean, it's a problem. And it's the number one issue, I think, this and mental health and behavioral health in our country.
I do know that the bus stops, in my experience, have been the best place to connect with those who, in communication, you're right, is a problem. But if we had to put information to those that don't have a phone, who have suffered from the worst consequences of affordable housing, displaced, that's where a lot of them are going. I know our officers know this too. And the colder the weather it gets, the closer they get. And that's, maybe the city can work with the agencies or getting like a one pager and having some sort of information slot that gets them hope of like, oh, I just got to get here. And you have to think like they think. They can't click links. So you have to kind of show the nearest, having resources there for them to get out of those situations. Again, I'm focusing on more extreme circumstances, but overall pricing has skyrocketed, and how we fix it will be really important. Anything else, board, on this one? And Vice Chair Raymond, obviously this is your item. Do you want to do anything further with it?
We've discussed it. Anybody else have ideas? As I said, it's a big issue.
Thank you. Staff, any comments on this final? No? Any final comments? No, that's okay. Good deal. All right. Well, moving right along, we are on item number 4, which is pickleball courts at Cape Canaveral City Park. Vice Chair Raymond.
I'm going to turn this around a little bit. Pickleball and tennis is not compatible. I think people thought, maybe inexperienced people who never played pickleball, never played tennis, thought maybe it was compatible. No other tennis court has been destroyed the way Nancy Hansen tennis courts, our only designated tennis court in the city of Cape Canaveral, has been destroyed. It's not just the lines, it has to do with the whole culture. Pickleball culture is very different from the tennis culture. So what I propose is that we build new tennis courts, and clay tennis courts are low maintenance and they are cheaper to build. Yes, you have to put some type of a base down. And I don't care where they go, but I'm not sure that they need to be at the Nancy Hansen Center. I think the other problem, you might think, well, if they go at Manatee Park or Banana River Park, that there might be a problem or we might have to hire more staff. No, I think that what we could do is when someone makes a reservation for the tennis court, they pay for the tennis court when they make the reservation. If it rains, they can get a credit. But I think that we do need to do something about this because the tennis courts it's difficult for people playing tennis when there are 60 people waiting to play pickleball. And they don't understand that normally speaking, if you're waiting for a tennis court, you would wait outside the tennis court, not for pickleball. Pickleball players come inside the tennis court to wait. And that is an issue. And if our new pro that we hired, our tennis pro, if he's trying to give a lesson next door to a pickleball court, pickleball is number one, very noisy. And I thought about possibly City Park, but I think the residents would complain around City Park because of the noise. I don't think that would work out very well. So I want to say I don't think that works. But tennis is quiet, very quiet as far as people playing tennis. It's not noisy the way that pickleball is very noisy. And there's a lot going on the pickleball courts. And if you don't believe me, just walk over. It starts at 8 o'clock in the morning at Nancy Hansen Center. And yes, we've tried very hard to coexist. But what's happened is a lot of our tennis players have moved to other courts. And I worry about what we have right now. It's not a good situation. We've also been reported to Space Coast Tennis League because our guests were very upset about having to play next to the pickleball players. And we've had a couple of unsavory incidents, I'll say. And some of the pickleball players felt that they could bring dogs on the tennis courts. I don't think that tennis courts were meant for dogs. We have built a beautiful dog park. I don't go to the dog park to play tennis. I've threatened though. So I'm changing this around and think what we need are new tennis courts. Thank you. Designated courts, not shared.
Exclusive.
Yes, not shared with pickleball.
One of the
Thank
P's,
you.
the big P's at Cape Canaveral, pets on the beach, peacocks and pickleball.
One of my suggestions, we're going to be doing a discussion with the hub. You know, the racquetball courts are going to cost us, I think, what, $50,000+ to repair. So, and we don't use them. I understand we don't use them that much. So that's, to me, is an option, you know, tear down the racquetball courts and then extend and put tennis courts there in clay. That would be an option to me. I think going to like Manatee Park or whatever would be a hard thing because they're not going to be, I don't want to say controlled, but nobody would be there if any issues came up or anything like that, and staffing and stuff. So my suggestion would be the Civic Hub.
Well, we are going to be doing visioning for the Civic Hub, and that should be one of the considerations of what the
Right.
planning would be and all of that. So, you know, it would, in my mind, it would be easy to separate tennis courts from the pickleball across that property. But we do have a visioning going on. So I think we probably should just be waiting on the visioning and making this a request. You know, just an input for it and see where it goes and how it could be laid out.
Let me just make sure.
Pickleball. The courts that we have now were originally tennis courts. Instead of building up more tennis courts, couldn't we build separate pickleball courts? Are they smaller? And I mean, before pickleball became so popular, there wasn't a problem at Nancy Hanson, was there?
No, and we
You're gonna
had,
get her going now.
no, and
Tennis
for
was there
more
first,
than
no
35,
doubt. Yeah,
40
I think
years,
that's- yeah.
we had people coming from all over to play tennis here. And for example, there was a
And
wonderful
racquetball was-
Friday, there was a great Friday group. They've dispersed. They don't play here at Cape Canaveral any longer. So it's kind of like, you know, I thought about this as the chicken or the, what, you know, what came first, chicken or the egg? But I mean, the tennis court was very active, but the people have left now. And they're playing at individual courts, or they play at Kiwanis or whatever. And as I said, I think at night, I don't know if the pickleballers are playing at night, but we have some of the organized still going on at night, the people that play competitively at night. I think that's great. But we have 2 teams through Cape Canaveral, through Space Coast Tennis League. And we've had them for a long time and we'd like to continue, but it's getting to be difficult. It's difficult, you know, practicing. As I said, if Peter's trying to give a lesson, and he's very good, he's very professional, he has coached professional tennis players, it's very difficult if it's right next door to the pickleballers. And it's not just the people playing pickleball, it's people waiting to play pickleball. That's part of the problem also, and the dogs. But, you know, it's difficult to hear Peter if he's giving instruction, even if he has reserved 2 of the courts and there's a pickleball court next to it. So it's not just for residents. I'm happy the residents are out. During the pandemic, I think it was a wonderful thing. I'm happy about that. But we're talking non-residents. And I've heard people bragging, oh, this is great. Not only can I come and play pickleball here at Cape Canaveral and tell the city what to do, but I also can get my card charged for absolutely free over at the library. And that too. So I won't bring that. Never mind. We won't open that can of worms tonight. But we do need to take care of this. And it just, pickleball and tennis is not compatible. So I propose new tennis courts, not new pickleball courts, because it's not fair. They've already taken over the tennis court, plus they can play inside at the community center. They already have 2 places. And I think if we do a poll of this, you'll find we have more non-residents coming, playing pickleball here than residents. And each city does have pickleball courts, but in different places.
Mhm.
They haven't destroyed the tennis court. I don't know anybody else who has destroyed the tennis courts.
Isn't it the city that puts the lines in on the tennis court for the pickleball? So why, if the city needed 2 separate tennis courts, you just don't put the lines for the pickleball on there and they're designated specifically for tennis?
Well, they have 2 designated today specifically for tennis, but the issue 3, but the issue is the pickleball's awesome. Tennis is awesome. I like all the sports. Pickleball is very popular and it's sprawling. And it is now taken over because it's a great sport, great exercise. On the joints, I hear it's a little better for the folks who former tennis players, and then, but it is a noise. It is louder. It's intense. And I think that, yeah, everything I heard is to me, my feedback is great. I think, as we're looking at our properties, if we're going to shrink the size of tennis court down to what it is today, and pickleball is over here, well, that experience for the tennis player has certainly changed. And I don't play tennis here or pickleball, but I watch it and there's videos and I see them out there and driving by, they're having fun. And that's great. That makes me happy. I like people having fun in Cape Canaveral. I think we all do. And so that is a good way if we're going to shrink the size and kind of lower the quality of life for the tennis players, and the pickleballers aren't optimal because they got those tennis players over there and they want it all. To me, it does make sense to separate them so you can maybe we have less tennis, but it's a better experience. And then I think it's a win-win. Pickleball's happy, tennis is happy. You keep them separate. And however that looks or turns out, we got the space. We can figure it out at the
Absolutely.
strategic planning meeting.
Absolutely. A tennis court alongside a pickleball court. The people playing tennis are all not professional tennis players. And I can't even imagine that those balls on the tennis court wouldn't be going over the pickle thing and causing all kinds of problems. It would seem like you should at least have 2 tennis courts side by side that don't have pickleball interfering. And the same thing with the pickleball. Sounds like you guys are in a real pickle here.
I will yield to, we all have our strengths in our professional lives and our hobbies, and you do. When it comes to Elvis, I know who to talk to. If it comes to tennis, I'm going to talk with Vice Chair Raymond and anyone else who plays. But no, I think her point is well taken. For me, is that separation is a good thing here, right?
Right
That's
now, and temporarily, I have to say that.
And the pickleballers aren't going to be upset.
Yeah, no. We've worked it out. I gave a proposal to Molly and John, and we have worked it out for this year. As far as when we are playing a match, 1 or 2 days a month, then we have a quiet court so that nobody is disturbed or the pickleballers aren't yelling at our guests, whatever. Okay, whatever. So we've worked it out for this year, and I think that's good. That works out. The problem is it's part of the color too, like over at tennis courts at Solana on the River. We have green, and we put just a deeper shade of green. It's not so obnoxious. Whereas if you have a blue tennis court and you put bright yellow lines for the pickleball, that's distracting then when you're playing tennis, when you're trying, because you have the double lines. All right, you have too many lines on the tennis court. And it's distracting when you're trying to call, a serve good or bad. So that's the problem with so many lines. Okay. And, that's some of the problems with it. But it's a cultural problem too. But a lot of the tennis players play pickleball. I mean, I play pickleball, so it's okay. It's good, but the problem, people at our place, they don't use a pickleball, even though we lined it at our place because they broke their arms and legs because they didn't understand the footing. Like in tennis, the way that you move your feet is the most important thing.
I have a
Fines.
question.
Got it. I was a little late. I got it. That's good.
Okay.
Sweet and sour.
I have a question for board chair. We have the handball court. Are they being used anymore?
Racquetball.
Oh, racquetball. I'm sorry. Well, you could play handball in there too.
Yeah.
And the shuffleboard, how many people are playing shuffleboard? And that's like, is that going to happen to pickleball down the road? Are we going to,
This time of year, you have the best chances of seeing a shuffleboard.
Yeah.
You're
We
right.
don't know. We don't, I can answer that question. We don't know if pickleball is a fad or it's a growing sport. There is a professional pickleball, and now on the tennis channel, you could see professional pickleball. I watched it over the weekend. And, you know, because I'm interested in the Australian Open. So we don't know is the answer to that question. It's getting very, very popular now. And as I said, we have a professional pickleball league.
And when you look at the experience of a pickleball player, and I had a chance to talk with them and spent some time with Molly and Todd, and they really helped me understand this, is one of their pains is it's so popular, the wait times when they get a court, the games move a lot faster to there. And so as they're waiting, they want to lower their wait times, because if you got to wait 30, 40 minutes, right, you're going to lose people. It's so big, so growing. And so I think that our goal shouldn't be to address the fad issue, that we're going to meet 100% of demand at all the time. Because if you swell up with the fad, you got all this asset, and then when it shrinks and you're not accounting snowbirds and fluctuations of things, then you're stuck with dead assets. I would say shuffleboard probably could drop a few of those courts, right? I mean, an example, but was there a time when it was
I saw people
shuffleboard
using it
derby out
today.
there? I don't know.
I
But
saw
yeah.
people using it
Years
today.
ago, it was packed out there all the
Yeah,
time.
one
Well,
of
not-
and
Yeah.
Especially
But
this
not
time
in
of
the past
year.
10 years, really.
Right.
1 o'clock in the afternoon, I think they have a group of seniors play on Friday afternoons. But
Great.
today I did see them out there.
Mr. Chair, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
Molly's perspectives on
Please.
these.
And I do understand the financing.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that we have Rec Desk, I mean, we've always been able to kind of, even back when we had an analog register when I first started, we were still logging things as pickleball, tennis, racquetball. Racquetball, that was the first one you guys mentioned. There's an ebb and flow to that. And in the last 8 years, and I just got done, right before this meeting, I had a meeting with Marcy, who is the senior programs coordinator over there, and she's the one that's been leading up the racquetball charge. When I first started in 2014, my job as a part-time rec leader was to manage the tennis and the racquetball leagues. So I saw where it started. I watched it grow. I heard all of these fantastic stories about this world famous tournament that happened for 30 plus years there, that even Sheriff Ivey was once a part of when he was an active racquetball player. And yes, I heard everything from RVs parked in the street to keg stands in the grassy area. So it was it was quite the event. See, I'd love to have that kind of energy come back, obviously with considerably less liability, but the racquetball issue, I was just informed we're back up to having 2 separate tiers again. That was always something that we fought, because we've been saying, oh, it's dying, oh, it's back, oh, it's dying, oh, it's back. Because we kept trying to introduce like a beginner league, because the seasoned players aren't interested in playing with the newbies, and then there wasn't enough newbies to form a league. So we've always been back and forth on that. So that one's kind of up in the air, and I would honestly, the group that we have that comes out and plays racquetball, I would highly recommend you guys go out and chat with them. I've recently been over and run into
The
them.
racquetball, sorry.
The
Jimmy.
racquetball,
Okay,
yes,
racquetball.
the
Yes.
racquetball.
Yeah.
Because they do have a lot to say, and I said, hey, we've got a project coming up, and your voices are going to be really critical when it comes to preserving your ability to play this sport on this property going forward. And shuffleboard, beyond this particular little window, there's not enough demand for that large of a space to be used for that. It brought in, I understand the last 2 years obviously are not the normal, but when you have pickleball racking in 20,000 some odd dollars, give or take, from July to July, and then you have tennis bringing in close to 10 from July to July, and then you have shuffleboard bringing in $650. I hate to take away something that to me is an observed tradition, because we had families prior to the pandemic. There were people that have been coming down renting the same little rental that they've rented for 25, 35 years over across the street at Hitching Post. And they have their group and they come in and they play on. I was glad to hear that the Friday group is still there, but we also had a Monday and a Wednesday group. And as they started aging out and they were unable to travel or passed away, their kids, who are now in their late 50s, early 60s, started coming down. And we were just starting to build that up again when the pandemic hit. And I don't know, I mean, the pandemic just didn't affect people's ability to travel, but economically it affected people's ability to be snowbirds or to rent a house in Florida for 6 months, or even to invest, keep their second home if they did own here. So there's definitely usage patterns that we have to look at. And one of the things that I'm hearing from both tennis and racquetball players is everybody just wants to be separate. They want their own dedicated courts. And we do have options, especially with the Civic Hub and the things that we know right off the top of the chart that we could either do away with or improve greatly for that entire footprint of that property. And we just need the residents to come out and engage and tell us what they really want.
Can I ask a quick question? I know when the Healthplex was across from Merritt Square, when I was in there, racquetball was packed. I mean, everybody, have we gained any of those people since that's been torn down? And I don't know if they're building another one to put courts. I mean, because right now it's only us and Kiwanis Island. So again, I know they're building the hospital, but I don't know if they're building the Healthplex with courts again, or if that.
I will have to kind of, let me go back in the numbers and I'll look.
Okay.
And I'll look at, the date that was actually closed and see if there was a jump. In the past, my uncle used to play there constantly because he appreciates the air conditioning. And we've had plenty of people ask when we were going to enclose ours and add AC and fans. But there really was not a whole lot of back and forth because, and perhaps this is the culture of racquetball, you either like playing in or you like playing out. Some people, appreciate that extra sweat. I'm not one of those. I would prefer to do my workouts in front of a fan, but there's a crowd, there's a place for everyone. There's a crowd for everyone, whether it be an indoor tennis court, whether it be a clay tennis court, whether it be a dedicated pickleball, indoor, outdoor. And I'm sure eventually maybe pickleball will even get into clay.
Yeah, I have to say something here. Excuse me. There were people in their 90s playing racquetball here.
Still are.
Still are, that I know. And I think that's a wonderful thing. In their 90s.
Edna Mahoney. Edna Mahoney is a legend around here, and she'll still come out and play on occasion. It's Judge
Edna
Mahoney's mother.
Maloney's another one.
Yeah.
From Cocoa Beach, she comes and plays racquetball. It's incredible.
Testament to longevity.
It is the secret.
Absolutely. Move. Well, thank you. Is there anything else on that? It
Do you have
sounds
any
like
other-
we're all,
If you have any specific questions, I can do my best to answer them or write them down to research them later for you.
for right now, I had a chance to speak to the racquetball, which you and I, it was months back. And if I understand you, it's a good idea to circle back with that racquetball community again.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
And I
might not need
understand.
the whole four. If you look at the history of that property, it was originally 2. And if you stand back and look at it, you can see which 2 are the original. And then they expanded on it, I think, in the 80s. But yeah, it has been a very rare occasion, and only during leagues, in my personal experience working over at that property for as many years as I did, where I saw all 4 courts being used at the same time. It was literally only during leagues, because especially once you get to the ages that a lot of our regular, especially our morning players, they're not too keen on ducking down into a 2-foot door to get into play. They'd rather just they're there for, motion activity, but not all of us can literally get down almost on our knees to crawl in through the door of the old handball courts. So
My only thing would be like just understanding the dimensional requirements, just the basics. Like she talked about 2 tennis courts, right? 2 is what you were saying. What is the space that we would need minimum
I would have to look
for
that
all
up.
and rough, like length width, for pickleball. Because I think out of those, the racquetball would be the smallest footprint use.
If you did a single
Like
solitary
bare minimum,
pickleball,
just one.
if you took the sizing and line requirements for pickleball, that would be the smallest court. Like
Pickleball,
right
okay.
now, pickleball can take place on, you can have one tennis court equals 2 pickleball courts. Racquetball is somewhere in the middle. I would have to get my dimensions on
So
that.
if we restriped, they might have that, those courts were designed for tennis.
These
Pickleball
are
came
very
in,
much-
they may not need those backdrops and regulations. I don't know anything about it, but I'm saying, is that optimal? If you were to build a new vacant land pickleball court, it probably wouldn't look like that. It would be a much more efficient use of space.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's a
That's-
lot of space, and not saying that pickleball players don't need to stop on a hot day and take
Sure.
a break in a seat, but you know, looking at it with a fresh
Shorter
set of
distance.
eyes, no offense to 1976, but you know,
Yeah,
I think we're a little more economical in how we plan things out and master plan things, because
Yeah.
that also ultimately also impacts your cost and your maintenance.
yes.
And it's already in the budget for, I believe, John, do you have your book? Is it 24, 25 or 25, 26 for the resurfacing of the courts? It's under the CIPs.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
is
please.
this actually a CRA issue?
Well, if she's talking about using the CRA to fund a capital improvement project, I would say it's so we just talked about ways to use the money in the private sector. The way I look at this is ways to use money in the public. But it doesn't have to be. Yeah. It is in the CRA district.
Yeah.
I think where it would trigger is if we tried to use CRA money outside the CRA district to build, which actually Manatee and Banana River Park are not in the CRA
They're not.
district. So that would be a conflict, but yeah. And I understand, and it's going to be fun. We don't need to know the exact date, but to know that it's happening.
Yeah, tennis
was
court
next year?
resurfacing is budgeted for 24, 25.
Okay. So,
I'm not sure how old those numbers are, because
Yeah.
obviously everything's changed in the last 2 years. Might cost more, might cost
Yeah.
less. It might have a 3-year lead time. We don't know anymore.
That's why I was saying that we could keep those tennis courts and build pickleball courts.
no, that's,
You know,
I would
and
love to look at the big
resurface
picture.
the tennis courts we have. And,
That
yeah.
might be the smartest. Anything else?
Nope.
We got, we're at 5:42, so if y'all are okay, any reports, anything we can,
I have something that before we adjourn. We had talked about for the incentive program, the marketing, the program with the brochure or mail out or anything. And we were talked about postcards. Is that still, we're going to do that? Is that correct?
We did talk about advertisement. If the board cares to weigh in, do we want to do postcards? Is that the preferred way to do
Well,
it?
I think on the social media works, but I think people, not all people are on social media. And
Sure.
if they get a postcard that says these are programs available at the city, I think would really be.
Direct mailer postcards, is that preferred by the board?
And then, in the newspaper, I think it's once a month or whatever it is, there's a thing about Cape Canaveral and what's happening in the city. I think Titusville did it in their advertisements in the newspaper. Their incentive programs. So between that and the social media and the postcard, that's what I was hoping we would do.
That's out of the $50,000 budget.
Yeah.
Is there consensus from the board for that?
so they'd pull from the 50,000 example and spend $1,000 to mail them. So you deploy 49,000.
Right.
I think I have no problem with that. Should not exceed 3% of the total budget, which would be, I don't know, is that just some sort of cap?
1,500.
But I trust not going to spend 25,000. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we looked at, I talked to our staff.
But also residential, because of residential component. So I see heads nodding, board chair. I think we're okay with that. Yeah.
There's also $1,000 in the CRA for administrative purposes
Mhm.
that could be used for anything.
Can
There
you
you go.
clarify the consensus then?
But,
Yeah, do we
we'll
have
record we can record consensus unless anybody's against it to do up to 3%, which would be $1,500 for mail out, direct mail outs.
Yeah, can you,
Or not to exceed
well,
some larger
when
number.
you expand to the residential mail list, it costs the same amount of money to mail a 1,000 square foot house as of the biggest building here. And so you have to be careful. The parcels and residential mail, that's hitting a lot of mailboxes at 50 cents a postcard. So, okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Only
I
in
would
the
say
CRA.
5% maybe. I'm just
5%?
trying to do quick
Not
math. If there's
exceed.
there's 5,400 total addresses, the worst case scenario, if you mailed the whole city would, I guess, $2,500 would be the most, 3,000. But I know, yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
So
I think
record
we're
consensus
good.
to not exceed 5%.
Don't want to
For
set you up for
CRA
fail.
CRA direct mailers to residents and businesses in the CRA area.
We good? Okay, we have consensus. Any final comments? If not, we can go ahead and adjourn. Seeing none, meeting adjourned.